Welcome to another episode of the Headlight Restoration Pro, where I'll be showing you how to take advanced headlights that are difficult to do with these fins and these bumps and different hangovers and turn them into something like this. Picture perfect, flawless, better than the day I rolled off the lot. Also, I'll be showing you the proper times and the value of wet sanding when properly done.
We're gonna see some serious shit. That's right. 25 years into the future. I've always dreamed of seeing the future, looking beyond my years, seeing the progress of mankind.
Why not?
I'll also be able to see who wins the next 25 World Series.
Let's get down to business. Okay, this is a 2016 Honda Civic, and this is one of the ones I watch out for because, believe it or not, it's an advanced headlight. It's quite difficult to achieve a perfect 10 on this headlight. I always do, but I'm very experienced, I'm a pro, and it took time to do that. But this is those overhangs or hangovers that I call them, and indentions, which drive up the price of your headlight restoration because there's more skill that needs to be set in doing a headlight restoration on this without fucking up a car. Or these little spots here are so easy to fuck up, and then once you do mess them up, let me dial down that a little bit, potty mouth. Once you do mess these up here, it is so extremely difficult to fix. If you burn these little areas here, or if you too in depth with any kind of scratching, whatever, it's so difficult to fix. It's going to take a lot of work to fix. All right. And I've learned this from experience. Like I said, this part right here, when you're fitting your drill bit in your edge, your 3-inch in there, it fits fine, but it's touching the edges or whatever. That's why I slow down a little bit up in here, and I really focus on not beating up those edges, although they're taped, and they're extremely taped. And that brings up an important point. You got to know where to put extreme tape. This area where I'm grinding out here in the center, and then this area down here, and then the corners on the other end are going to be where I seriously taped. There's probably an overall average of maybe 4 or 5 layers all the way around the headlight, and those particular areas is probably like 8 to 10 just overlapping. Why? Because it's extremely prone for you to eat through that tape or to be grinding up against the tape. So you want to insulate and cushion that area. But as you see here, these are difficult. If you can't see this little area right here, right there, it has a lip, okay, that goes all the way to the end of this little, triangle, this little structure here that I'm working on here. And if you notice, I'm feathering the trigger, I'm going really slower, and what my focus is right here is not to completely grind off 100% of this clear coat or, get down in there like that, like I would another part of the light, like I would this flat part of the light here. What I'm doing is roughing it up so it's easier for me to get it by hand when the time comes. Because if you sit here and try to get these little intricate areas with a power drill, it's not going to cut it. And you're just going to end up, gouging it out, burning it, or doing some weird shit that's going to take forever to fix if you can fix it. Okay, warning. Yeah, if you can fix it, okay? You might do permanent damage. You don't want to do that. And I've learned this from experience, okay? So, I've done so many of these vehicles. Honda is probably the number 2 most done vehicle that I do. Okay, the number 1 is going to be Toyota. And believe it or not, the number 1 is probably a Toyota Camry that is done. Okay, on top of that, the number 1 vehicle is Toyota, number 1 vehicle is Toyota Camry. Fun fact, the Toyota Camry is pretty much the world's best-seller vehicle for many years now. It sells the most in the world. It sells the most in America. Therefore, it might be the biggest vehicle you see around there. Toyota's pretty world-renowned as well. But I looked that up the other day, and I was like, why do I do so many of these damn cars? I looked it up, and sure enough, it is the world's most purchased vehicle, and it's been that way for many years now. Surprisingly, huh? Always learning something. But you see this area here, you know, you always want to attack these areas and make sure that your pad is new enough to do the best job it can, okay? Sometimes that means changing the pad over if you don't feel it's grinding like you just started using the pad or whatever, because you want it to not work hard on these little spots like this. And if you see here, I'm really just trying to keep the bit at the end really flat and going really light, okay? Because you will burn these and permanently damage these areas. And when you're trying to get them out, the only real way to get them out and to, you know, make them better is going to be through hand sanding. Because if you keep trying to sand with the power tool in those crevices and those weird areas, it's just going to keep fucking it up further. So you're going to be having a hand sand, whether it's dry or whether it's wet. Hand sanding takes fucking forever. It's the slowest method of headlight restoration. It's like pulling teeth to me sometimes. But it is necessary at times in certain spots of headlights or certain headlights. And just like wet sanding, like I said, like I always said, this method is so advanced and it is the future of headlight restoration because it's pretty much like a mixed martial arts, okay? But it's a mixed headlights, okay? If you can metaphorically express that, it's mixed headlight restoration, not mixed martial arts, okay? Meaning, just like that, if you know, back in the day, they just used to have boxing, they just used to have karate, or they just used to have jiu-jitsu. Then when people started throwing all those in together, they started becoming, you know, the most deadliest weapons on the planet, right? MMA fighters, right? They don't just do one thing. They, you know, they're kickboxing, they're doing wrestling, they're doing, you know, jiu-jitsu, they're doing all this shit. When one person is like, I box, okay, but in a real fight, once you go against them, you might not end up correct, right? You're probably gonna get outworked because they're doing a lot of shit. They're utilizing their whole body as a weapon instead of just one aspect, okay? And it goes for the same thing with, and by the way, I love all contact sports. I'm a contact sport guy, a real contact sport guy. Like, football's cool, contact sport, whatever, but I'm talking like fighting, you know, boxing, MMA, you know, kickboxing, all that stuff. I love that shit. That's just what I like. But anyhow, it's the same thing with this. It's you have to be able to utilize what is needed for the task. And you see here, I am wet sanding, which is going to buffer off of the ability of the sandpaper to scratch. It almost takes down a notch. You know, turns this 500 into probably like a P300 or something, right? Oh, excuse me, like a P, wrong way. Lower is higher, but like a P, you know, 750 or something like that, right? So it just kind of, yeah, you gotta watch spots like that too. You always want to make sure if you see dark spots like that, that you make sure they're not ate through the tape, and if need be, retape it or whatever. This one doesn't, so just optical illusion there. But anyhow, when I wet sand like that, it's taking the ability, it's lubricating the sandpaper, okay? It's making it less aggressive, and it's also, that heavy water there is diminishing its ability to sand. So, by diminishing its ability to sand, you're diminishing the ability for it to make any kind of blemishes in those areas. It's like a lubricant, okay? And that's exactly what you want to use it for on these steps. And then a lot of times, what I used to do that used to mess me up is I wanted to do these parts like as in depth as every other part of the light, and that is a big no-no. Okay, you just want to get it down to a respectable part, okay, as long as it's not extremely degraded or like just pockmarked or weird or crazy like that. You want to get in and get out on these pieces. You don't want to sit there and try to grind it like I'm doing this area here, okay? They're just beauty marks. They have nothing to do with the functionality of the light. Very little to do, if that, okay? So they're not a functional piece of the light. They just put them on there for fucking to make this shit look more like a transformer or whatever, right? This is they don't have this on every year. this is one of the years that I watch out for, the 2016 and the ones, you know, up from there. But they, you know, they're difficult because of these little things here. So, the best thing to do is be really gentle on those places, because you could have the whole entire light be perfect. And I've had this before, okay? Back in the beginning, like shit. And this is one of the lights that I really had to focus on and try a bunch of different things and do a bunch of different techniques to figure out how to achieve that overall perfection, okay? Because I kept having problem with these little areas right there, and I would come to a point where I just have to stop and let it be what it is, okay? And they still came out to be top-notch, perfect lights, but it was just like, man, me being up close at 2 feet, I see stuff that I don't like or whatever. And it would take so long to get all these blemishes out. But this is what I came up with, and this is what I do now, and it's not an issue anymore. You just have to be really patient, and you have to really watch your pressures. And like I said, you know, don't try to beat those areas with the drill, because it's not going to work. And as you see here, I'm even going to wet sand with that P800. Normally I dry sand the whole light, but these areas right here, I'm doing that baby sanding all over it. And that's what wet sanding is baby sanding. Okay, it has a part in sanding. If you look it up, I'll show you right here, Google. The proper step for sanding, of sanding plastic or sanding whatever, is going to be starting with dry sanding, because dry sanding is the removal part, right? And finish sanding, part of sanding, would be wet sanding. Okay, this is why my method is constructed this way, right? It goes through proper channels of making something crystal clear smooth, or silky smooth, super smooth like glass. Okay, you would sand it dry first with ascending or descending sandpaper grits, right? Or ascending, excuse me, sandpaper grits, and then what happens? I transfer into wet sanding with the P3000. Excuse me, the 3000. You could call it a P3000 or whatever, but it's a 3000 Trizac. Okay, with wet sanding, and then from wet sanding, what is higher than wet sanding of a Trizac? Polishing. And then I polish, and then I clear coat. So grammatically, in the true meaning of sanding something, this method is grammatically correct. You don't want to start, you know, your whole process with wet sanding, because it's not grammatically correct. It's going to take longer. It doesn't come out as good because you're lacking heat, and a whole lot of other things. And it's metaphorically, think of it this way. It's like I want to dig a pool, right? Why would I go out there with a shovel, you know, and start digging a pool, making a pool? Wouldn't it make more sense to come in with a tractor, dig out the pool, whatever, and then the fine touches go over with with the shovel? You know what I'm saying? Shape it, whatever, with a shovel once you're in there. It'd make no sense to start with a shovel. You'd be there forever. It would take forever. You can do it. Don't get me wrong. You can do it, but it's things about efficiency and things that are better than whatever. There's just certain things that, one can't do or one can't provide. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's possible, but, I mean, who the fuck wants to do that shit? And as you've seen, with the 3000 Trizac, you don't have to worry about those areas. You can hit those with the power tool, because the 3000 Trizac is a scratch remover. It's not particularly a scratch maker. Okay, it's only a scratch maker on a surface, and it's loosely said that because the scratch pattern is so fine, it becomes a fog. Like if I put that on paint and just did that dry or whatever, it would be like a fog. You wouldn't even really see scratches because the pattern is so fine. That's the beauty of the Trizac. It's on this surface, it's particularly a scratch remover. So you don't have to worry about a scratch remover. The other ones are scratch makers. Okay? Even though P800 is technically a scratch remover, it is still a scratch maker per se. It makes a smaller amount on a smaller scale scratches to counteract the greater discs before it. But yeah, with that being said, this was a husband and wife duo today. They needed their vehicles done. I started with her vehicle, which was this one. They found me, did her vehicle, and then I did his vehicle next, which was a Prius. I'll show you before and afters of that after this. And you'll check that out and see the consistency rate of this method is through the roof. It's a dab method right here, and don't forget the dab method is very important, man. It stops shit from flinging everywhere. It allows time for those porous environments to soak up that beneficial oil, okay? The oil just starts sucking into those little caverns, because once again, I haven't said in a while, but the surface of polycarbonate looks more like a woven blanket or a sponge, okay, like this. That's right. It looks more like this than what you think. And that's why it's not all clear. And then once you start polishing, or after the dab method, after all that beneficial oil has sunk into the headlights, once you start polishing it, it's kind of embedded in there. And also those peaks are knocked down. If you know anything about polishing a vehicle, that fog comes from those holes not being filled, and there's peaks. Okay, if you think of like I don't know, like a grass that is grown all crazy and erratic or whatever, and then you mow it and it's flat, it looks different, right? It's kind of like that, but those peaks get knocked down and filled in pretty much, and that's why it is clear. It's also why my headlights are so amazingly clear, and why my headlights are so amazingly efficient. They're like 110% efficient. If you think of 100% off of the factory spec efficiency, they work better than the day they rolled out the lot, literally. So this is part of the reason why you're reintroducing back beneficial oil. And I know some people are watching this, they haven't watched any of my other videos, which I advise you to. I have over 130 videos streaming right now, well over. But oil is beneficial to this. It's like giving blood back to somebody who's donated blood or something, right? It's part of it, okay? These headlights are derivative of oil. Okay, the way polycarbonate is made is a distilled oil, essentially, or like a diesel. Okay, it's pretty much a diesel hydrocarbon fuel. Okay, so they distribute it from a distillery type process, and then they make these pellets. And then they comes out these little tiny granulates, and then they put them into an injection molded crucible, whatever. They heat it up and they inject it into these discs or these molds, and then they press them into these shapes. Okay, and through all that, it makes it clear. And newsflash, once again, when they spray the lights in the factory, they are already crystal clear. Okay, and that's for a reason, because if they sprayed foggy headlights, they would not work the same. They would look clear, message, but they wouldn't work for shit in comparison. You're talking like anywhere between 20 and 40% efficiency loss, believe it or not. That's why I say people will be careful who does your headlights, because these guys are out there spraying your headlights foggy, and they're not going to work the same. They're not going to work the same. I guarantee it. They'll work better. Don't get me wrong. They will work better. But once you want the best for your buck, once you want that extra 30% efficiency, 40% efficiency that you'd be getting out of somebody who does a headlights like this, who sprays your headlights clear, right? So just saying, message, they don't work the same. If you'd like to know more about that, check out this video on my page. You have to scroll down to the video log and check that out. That explains the process of the reintroduction of the beneficial oil and why the headlight looks so clear, okay, when it's done, and why it also makes it work better, it makes it look better, and it makes it last longer, the actual headlight, without spider cracking, without all these weird shit that goes on. Because think about it, if it's like a sponge or like a woven blanket or whatever, and you spray that, what happens? All that clear coat goes into those dry holes, especially if you're doing an alcohol wipe beforehand, right? What does alcohol do? Dry shit out, right? Exactly. And then you're spraying it in there, these other methods, you're spraying it in there with this shit. that hardens inside of those, think of it reverse drips or drips inside of the light. Okay, you're spraying that shit and it's hardening in there, and then you're dealing with a substance like a headlight. It flexes, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. The headlight flexes with heat or cold. It expands and contracts, believe it or not. This is a thermoplastic is what they call it. It expands and contracts with heats, like 80 degrees, 70 degrees, 100 degrees. And then, it expands. It fluffs up a little bit. It moves. Okay. And then with colds, 30 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever, it shrinks back. Okay. Always make sure you protrude the tip like that. Okay. Or you're going to have a bad time spraying. But and this leads to spider cracking when you do these methods like this, okay? Leads to spider cracking and all kind of other damage. Not only that, when you're doing a headlight restoration again, you have to take off a considerable amount just to make it clear again, right? Because those little pockets are full of that shit somebody sprayed on there. I know that from experience because I used to do headlights that way until I found out it's fucking up people's lights and it's 10 times less efficient on every single aspect. Okay. And this will, with this one here, you have those pockets broke down to their minimum size. You have them filled with a little bit of beneficial oil, which lubricates, hydrates the light per se, and also helps the light escape. Okay. Like I said, watch that video if you want to know more about that. And then what does that leave? If all that's going on, it makes it easier to remove this clear coat when it comes time. It comes right off. You don't have to go, super deep just to get it out. But look around there. There's no blemishes. There's no scratching, whatever. And this particular light, actually, both lights have a little bit of hazing on the inside. A little bit of breaching, water vapor that was inside. But overall, I mean, even with that, it's amazing. You can barely tell, but like I could tell, you could kind of see a little haze in there. I'll show you a little bit more on the other light, perhaps, but I'm trying to get it here. You can see it. It's a little bit of haze in there, but it is perfection, nevertheless. Way better than what she had. And the important part is the whole thing is perfection, not just the parts that weren't as difficult. Okay, I got everything, panning out, got my sign up so people know who I am, what's going on. Customer gave me a drink, got my little setup here, just show you guys. And this is how the other light turned out. Just as gorgeous. This one has less of a haze, but it's still there. You can see it more on this one because it's more spotchy instead of a whole coat of haze, right? You can see it in there, but both of them had it. It's a common problem with vehicles, and it only happens 3 ways. A direct cut inside of the headlight, a crack or something. That's very uncommon. The other way is, other 2 ways is a breach from a master seal. That's more common. And then the number 1 common is there's a grommet behind the light bulb. And I tell customers all the time, you might want to replace your light bulbs even though you don't need it, because the grommet gets worn from the heat and starts letting in moisture and dust. Okay, but this is a husband's car. Very nice, right? Very consistent method. It's like clockwork, and I show you 100% of it from the beginning to the end. No cuts, no bullshit. So you know you can do it, all right? That's what these videos are about. You can do it. Subscribe.
You're gonna see some serious shit. That's right. 25 years into the future. I've always dreamed of seeing the future, looking beyond my years. See the progress of mankind.
Why not?
I'll also be able to see who wins the next 25 World Series.